right, it is the first day of February here, and over here you'll see our lab cat drinking from our common water cup. We are involved now in a world event that is breaking even as I speak. Science does have a context. Science and humanity are one and the same. There is an offshoot of science, though, which has served humanity so well that it is unreasonable to overlook the fact that technology is a product of rational logic, which has produced, literally, in any sense of the word miracle, miracles. So electric lighting for humanity is miraculous. Now, in this time of impending crisis breaking now on the earth, there is a context to world events that I have demonstrated that religion is 100% the same as science. There is no difference between those two categories of human endeavor. They are necessarily and inextricably related. Now, you would have to add a comment to that, as I will now, that the two subsystems of a human, one of which is rational logic and the other of which is emotion, are not correlated except in an individual human being, where they must be correlated, or science would have no context for that human, and the emotional side, essentially including love, that will have no context unless it's based somehow in rational logic. These two have not traditionally been treated as the same for that reason. They're based on two completely different systems of interpretation, where the emotional subsystem is coordinated around positive emotions and negative emotions. There is, however, another framework of reference involving all humans. In the pursuit of pleasure, one does not wish to be unjust toward other humans. In other words, no theft, no murder. Basically, the 10 Commandments, a large portion of those commandments are directed toward getting along with each other. You don't rob people. You don't murder people. You don't lie against them in order to gain something at their expense. So these are just basic considerations called morality and justice, which rely in some cases, inevitable cases, on the pursuit of a rational adjudication of some conflict, where in any court case involving justice or moral infringement of some kind, where one person allegedly is trying to take advantage of another person in order to gain for themselves what really is unreasonable because it's at the expense of someone else, it goes to court. And in that case, both sides will lie to the utmost extent of their capacities. This is one reason why lawyers have such an extremely bad reputation. They will lie their teeth out. The court then has to decide who is lying worst. Both sides will lie, and they must under the orders of their legal advisors, who will simply say, if you don't lie, you're going to lose. So you're going to lie, or you see, the lawyer stands to gain anywhere from 30% on upwards of the take if there is money involved. And whenever there is money involved, it will not be a fair trial. The judge himself can be bribed. Juries have been bribed. And one can easily imagine a case where the jury is stacked against you for whatever reason, and so the court system is completely inadequate. But it's also completely necessary in order to curtail somehow the inevitable lusts of men as they seek to get what they want without working in a natural way to acquire legally and honestly what they want. They will steal it. That simply has been the truth of humanity since the beginning of time. Now, you or I might be mightily offended by such a characterization of all people, because some people are indeed honest, moral, just, and fair. Those people are generally classed, at least by one ancient classification system, as righteous men. Well, that's really hard to determine for a significant reason, which must be borne in mind at all times, that men are perfect deceivers. Men can imitate anything they want to get what they want. They will imitate, certainly, being absolutely spotlessly righteous, whereas the person they're either prosecuting or the person they're defending themselves from is unscrupulous, non-righteous, unrighteous, anti-human, out to get their way, their will, at the expense of yourself, for instance. So these court systems are required in order to curtail the most grievous offenses, in order to create a fear system against liars, thieves, and murderers, who abound. And no one is exempt from that possibility, certainly not in theory, certainly not in the abstract. Men will fake, they will lie, they will pretend, they will posture, they will do anything to escape punishment, and they'll do anything to get money, or what is equivalent to money, which is very often power or goods, political power, where now you have a protection for your illegal actions because you're part of a group. That's called a government. And that brings up our topic today, a most unhappy topic to have to cover it all, but actually, I take a quite bright view of current world events, because it is indeed leading to the ultimate consummation of this world, or this earth age, depending on how you look at things. There is going to be, and there has already begun, the last world war. The United States has been angling for this. You could go back in time, but if you go back 75 years, the United States had a serious conflict with communist Russia over the status of Cuba as a possible missile site for missiles directed at homeland United States from just a few hundred miles away across part of the Caribbean Sea. You may recall, if you study history, the Bay of Pigs and the ultimate debacle that resulted from that, although there was a standoff in the ocean between the military fleet of the United States and that of communist Russia, which was attempting to land material to build atomic weapons and other attack devices on the island of Cuba in order to achieve some kind of parity for what the United States had just done in Turkey. Now the situation in Ukraine is just an extension of that, where NATO, which means the United States, attempted to coerce Ukraine into joining NATO. And that was divisive, of course. I was in Ukraine at the time this concerted effort began, and it of course, you could say, succeeded or failed, but it led directly to war. Because there's no way on Europe's green earth or scorched earth that Russia could stand by while the United States acquired Ukraine for a missile base that is right on the border of Russia. But when Russia does it in order to get a similar base in Cuba, well, of course, that is just a crime against humanity, even though they're identical operations. Whatever you think of communism or democracy does not enter into the picture here. The way I'm presenting it, it's simply a question of who is lying worst. Who is lying worse than the other? And if you're a political analyst, in some sense, you have to say something about who's right and who's wrong. Now, in the present situation that just became public domain, a certain release of information which had been authorized by the executive office in the United States, the release of certain papers, as they're called, a huge amount of information, including thousands of photographs, emails, videos, and other documentation, has been released to the public that seriously implicates many people around the world, not just people, but organizations, with a seriously deranged man by the name of Epstein. And I just got my first look at that man's face today as this news was broached to me. And it's fairly obvious what Epstein was doing. And it involves people around NATO. Some very high-profile figures. And this has gone really viral for somewhat predictable reasons from what little I know at this time. The nature of these disclosures is absolutely inflammatory and leading in no good direction. What I would like to present you with is a certain perspective which you may wish to at least consider over and above or in addition to your current political leanings. I have no idea, but a scientist should be objective. He should not let his emotions sway his evaluation, even of such a situation as this, which is transpersonal. So you're not really talking about a liar unless you indict a group mind such as the United States or some organization. They have no conscience and they cannot really be attacked. One might argue that. I would say you're barking up the wrong tree if you think you're going to be able to influence a group mind. It's beyond human influence. That's what a group mind is. So we're going to close this off at 20 minutes. This is the introduction to a necessary series that I will be continuing, producing from time to time a video on the world situation as it unfolds. What you'll want to do as you consider these truly monumental events unfolding right now, it's really just a spark, but that's how World War I began, and you could probably add examples that things of this nature begin with a little spark. This is currently not considered to be a little spark by anybody who is analyzing it, and that's a clue right there. There is a cover-up going on, there is no question about it. The Epstein files have no real significance relative to what's actually going on simultaneously. The United States has really increased a blockade against Cuba. That's enough to lead to a war. It has been executing a full blockade against Iran, and the United States this summer attacked Iran. I claim that that's the threshold between what went before the United States attack on Iran and what has ensued since the United States attack on Iran, which in no way is the enemy of the United States or NATO or anybody in the so-called West. It is simply a country pursuing peaceful ends. That has been violently argued by a nation which feels directly threatened by the very existence of Iran, and now the word has been handed down from wherever this kind of word is handed down from. It's certainly not the President of the United States. He's nothing but a puppet. You could say that about any man speaking from any country in any office, virtually at any time. That man is completely insignificant. compared with the force that generated his identity, which is not human. It's just not human. So in the series that I'll be presenting, I hope not too extensively, because I don't want to be diverted from my primary aim, which you already know is just pure science, has nothing to do with world events. The distinction fades now. Without going into unnecessary, I suppose, nebulous or hazy notions or areas, I simply want to point out to you that nations are real and they execute the most serious effect on what happens to you and me, because nations are not human. And that's really what all I wanted to say for now, is to introduce my angle on world events, that we're dealing with nations. We're not dealing with Trump, Epstein, or anyone else with a human face. We're dealing with something supernatural, which may alarm you. Well, if it didn't before, it should now. Thank you. She has said, Scotty, you're tired. Isn't she beautiful?